continue with part 2 of our analysis of William Irwin Thompson's work from 1971, Values and Conflict Through History, 4th chapter of his 2nd book. And so we went through in part 1 the whole way in which a tribal community works, how it got organized that way, and we are now coming into the period of time roughly about 10,000 years ago when agricultural society begins. So going back to our PowerPoint presentation, we've shown the tribal community germplasm sort of shrunk down, because I'm going to be putting other objects on the screen here to show how complex society begins to get after this. Now, what tends to happen is you get, as soon as people are able to grow crops in rows and collect a lot more food than they used to through the hunting and gathering process, it creates a surplus, and this surplus of grain or food or whatever allows various people in that society to have to specialize in some aspect of the community without going out and having to hunt with the hunters. So now I'm going to show various outgrowths that occur from this germplasm of shaman, chief, clown, and hunter. They don't necessarily happen in this order. Rather, there's a conflict that creates these new institutionalized realms. But I'm going to go through from the bottom right quadrant through in a counterclockwise direction like we've been doing, only because it shows how these germplasms tend to grow and develop. We'll get into that, but in any case, we're at the tribal community, and what happens is the hunters, because of the storage of grain and what the new elite are able to do, they start getting pissed off that, hey, we have to do all the hunting, and you guys are just living off the stored grain. So what tends to happen, and we'll go to our next slide here, is that you get an outgrowth from the hunter realm of the germplasm of the hunter and gatherer society. That turns into an institution called the military. The military is the institutionalized way. It's a new institution in which the hunters get some power back from the other three realms that have grown around the tribal community. So we have the creation of an institution called the military. In reaction to that, what tends to happen next is that the chief has to organize himself a little bit better to counteract what's going on with the hunters turning into their own institution. You'll also notice up here that it now says Phase 2 Agricultural Society, from individuals to institutions. That's, again, very important, because with the inner germplasm, this shows individuals. You have a chief, you have a shaman, you have a clown, and you have hunters. But there are individual hunters. These are individual people. These outgrowths, these circles that are going to be like, Mickey Mouse ears around the germplasm, these are institutions. These are groups of people that have been gathered together for a purpose. And again, this purpose of these outgrowths happens because of the advantage of stored grain and the advantages that gives to other people who don't have to hunt. So the creation of a state happens from the chief. The state is the new institution that in which the chief now has advisors around him and all this other business telling him what he should or shouldn't do. That's the creation of the state. Now the whole cycle tends to continue again of action and reaction with the creation of religion. What happens here is that the shaman, as a lone person, is no longer able to match the power of the military and the state. So what happens is the shaman gets advisors around him or her and creates a institution called religion. Okay, religion goes to the same quadrant that the person who was trying to bring purpose to the tribe did. Now it's in an institution with its own particular purpose. And then finally, as you might guess, the final quadrant, the one that criticizes and or mocks the religion and or the other institutions, the clown turns into the institution of art. Okay, this is a new institution. It's a collective of artists and other types of people who individually used to criticize religions and or the state and or the military, but now the clown is powerless, so you get this institution of art. Now we've completed the cycle. We have 4 institutions that developed in early agricultural society that are now in place. This is the new power game. This is the way the game is now played. And as expected, what tends to happen is that these new institutions themselves turn into a new 4-quadrant germplasm in which the functions of the 4 realms of the tribe duplicate themselves in each of these new 4 quadrants. And Thompson goes on to explain that quite well. And actually what I'll do is on the slide, I'll break apart the first germplasm, which is the military, and I'll show you how that breaks out. Okay, so the military now itself has broken out into a functional germplasm of 4 quadrants. You have the general. Well, let's start down at the bottom. You have the foot soldier in the bottom right quadrant. The foot soldier is needed, or you don't have a military. You have to have that. That's again, in all these plasms, it's always the bottom right quadrant that's the masses, that's the people, that's the proletariat. These are the people that actually make up the body, of the institution, the people who are carrying out routine operational procedures. Then you get the general. Of course, in the military, there's all kinds of ranks and everything. But we're going to make this simplified and just say, okay, you have the general who's in charge of the military. You have the strategist who belongs in the upper left quadrant, the quadrant that would hold things like shaman and religion and stuff. The purpose of the strategist, of course, is to come up with a military strategy, something that would allow the military to win a battle or something like that. So the strategist is the thinker who's giving purpose to the military operations. He's on the charismatic ideational side, as you can see, not the routine operational side. And then, as you can see, what happens here is that you get a person who is sort of the clown or art of the military, and that would be the warrior hero. The warrior hero is supposed to be, could very well be, someone who did brave things in action and so on, but there's always going to be that space for a warrior hero, for the thing that brings a sense of art to warfare, which is there's actually the book that ancient Chinese book, it was written a long time ago, called The Art of War by Sun Tzu, and this person from many thousands of years ago understood these concepts. So you have the warrior hero. That's sort of the movie, the media, the big splash thing to display the military to the rest of the people and say this is a heroic thing that we're doing. So again, you have a completion of 4 cycles of one germplasm right there, the military. I want to now cut over to since Thompson sort of explains this stuff better than I could, I'll go ahead back to the book and quote. By the way, I have, instead of having to switch from my ebook of Thompson's book, I found my hard copy, so I can just read from here and not have to keep clicking around. So anyway, to quote Thompson on how all this tends to work out. The economic surplus of stored grain affects a social transformation whereby the part-time shaman grows into the institution of religion with its full-time specialists. The headman grows into the institution of the state, the physical hunter into the military, and the clown who mocked the mysteries of the shaman, the authority of the chief, and the physical grace of the hunter all goes into the institution of art. Because men are now full-time specialists, they no longer have to share in one another's lives. Social distance becomes extreme as new elites begin to lessen the authority of the other members of society. So as you can see by this diagram, whereas all, in the tribal germplasm, everything is huddled together in that circle, these new circles that grow out like Mickey Mouse ears, you can see that distance is created between groups. So this is a very accurate, these diagrams are a very accurate representation of how all this societal evolution happens. So let's go ahead and break apart, let's reveal how the state, religion, and art, their germplasms break apart and create new jobs for people. So we go to the next slide and showing how the state breaks apart into 4 quadrants. You have, of course, the general. Now you have the state one is a little tricky because there's something going on here I'm not going to reveal yet until a few slides into the future. But you have generally, in the state, you have the king, you have the general borrowed from the military to advise the king. You have a high priest who is the person giving purpose to what the state does. That person borrowed from religion. And you have the publicist who is telling everyone, in the society, what the state does is good. And the publicist is borrowed from the realm of art. And I'll show you how that all works later. In the religion quadrant, that breaks out into 4 quadrants itself. You have the high priest, the executive person, the theologian, who brings purpose to it all. This is what our religion is about. This is how all this stuff came about. Basically the storyteller. The mystic is the person who is acting as the clown in this realm. The mystic is the person who is mocking the theologian or criticizing the theologian, as well as the other 2 realms. The scribe is routine operational. The scribe is what the foot soldier is to the military and stuff like that. The scribe does work. The scribe has to sit and write scrolls and all that business. Okay, art breaks out in this way. A publicist is the head of the realm of art, is going around trying to sell that art or make it important to other people in the society. The celebrant plays the role of what the shaman is to the tribe. The celebrant is celebrating the art, helping the publicist out by bringing a sense, this art has a sense of purpose. The artisan over in the worker, in the routine operational lower category, that's the person making the art stuff, drawing the drawings, making the movies, doing the CGI work, all that business. Of course, here we're talking about sculptors and painters and stuff. There's no technology of that sort yet. The satirist critic, that role becomes obvious. It's a very pure role because you'll notice that if you draw arrows from the center of this diagram out, if you go if you draw an arrow from the clown to the satirist critic, you can see that the satirist critic is playing a pure role in art.